there have been, over the last year and continuing on, all kinds of organizational changes that have been taking place in the field, in our districts and regions. And so I'm going to ask Terasa to help fill you in on what those changes are and how they are affecting the field and how they may affect the work that you do in partnership with those in the field.
So as Harlan said, we have been undergoing some changes in how we have organized field staff. And many of you, I hope, were at the presentation that we did back last spring where we talked about what field staff do, how field staff interact with congregations, the kinds of services that they offer. And now I want to give you some idea of how we're trying to restructure the way in which they fit within the organization in order to be even better at doing that work with congregations. Because, of course, our constant mission is how do we serve congregations? How do we really advance the work of congregations? And so we've recognized, if we could switch, I don't know who's switching slides for me. Thank you. One of the things that has occurred to us is that in order to serve a changing world, maybe we need to change. What a concept. that a structure that existed to serve the kinds of congregational needs that we had in 1961 or even 1981 are not necessarily the kinds of structures that can help serve congregations in 2011. And mostly that's because, surprise, surprise, our congregations have changed. Their needs have changed. They need more specialized, focused services. They need things that can help them grow, that can help them make adaptive changes to things like how to cross borders, how to grow leaders, how to get religion, those kinds of things which were not necessarily central on their minds in the past. And so in order to provide a spectrum of services to those congregations, we recognize that the old model of one size fits all, one person trying to be all things to all people in one specific geographic area may not help us serve congregations best. That in order to have a range of people and a range of skills that we may be able to better serve the changing needs of congregations, and we'll talk about how we're going to do that. We also have a changing economy. It is no surprise to you that we have a changing economy and we have reduced resources, and we have an obligation to steward our resources better. And one of the recognitions that we have is to have administrative structures for 19 different districts is not necessarily the most cost-effective way of doing things. So, and especially now with new technologies, we're able to share functions across districts in ways that really make a lot more sense. And so we'll talk about how that's going to happen as well. And particularly with the changes in technology like we're experiencing today, we have an opportunity to interact with people in electronic ways that make geography less important. We can cross geographical boundaries. We can be accessible to people in different kinds of ways. Everybody doesn't have to be physically present in order to serve congregations. So all of those changes have made us look at the way in which we structure staff. Next slide, please. So what we're going to move toward in this process, and it is a process, it is not a done deal, there's not a really complete structure yet, but what we're moving toward is to continue to say that we are in relationship with local congregations. I want to be really clear that we are not pulling away from that need to be in relationship with congregations. It's just that there will be multiple people in relationship with congregations rather than just one, in a different kind of relationship. We are moving toward a shared staff team in 5 different regions that has a regional lead in each staff team who helps organize and facilitate the work of those staff teams in a way that helps expedite their development. And we're moving toward more resources and programs that are available not only for each region, but also for the association as a whole. If you go on to the Congregational Life staff pages and look at the number of webinars and programs and workshops that staff do, they're now going to be available to everybody, not just to one particular district or one particular region. So there are all kinds of ways in which we're trying to make our work more accessible across a whole spectrum of geographies, not just within a region. Thanks. So that's going to allow us to adapt to changes more quickly and more easily, to have more agility in deploying staff. So we don't have to wait until the one district executive in one district is available to serve a congregation. We would be able to send different kinds of people to do different kinds of things in a much more adept way. We will also be allowed to have staff teams learning from and being in community with one another. Being a district staff person in the age-old times when there was one person was incredibly lonely, and meant that there was kind of this cowboy mentality about, I'm serving my particular place. And now what we're finding with these staff teams is that we have these incredibly rich learning communities that form among staff, that they're really able to work together in ways that enhance their ability to work as an individual, but also, most importantly, to serve our congregations. And we're also able to offer differing skill sets. We have people who are faith development people. Is there a problem with the slides, or are we? Is it okay? We're able to offer people that have different levels of expertise, and I'm calling it deep generalists. We've been using this very odd phrase, because we don't want to say that people are just specialists in one area. You know, they're the faith development people that work with us are extremely experienced in all aspects of congregational life. And our district executives have experience in faith development. And, you know, it's not just one kind of particular expertise. But there are people who have deep experience in particular areas that can offer something that's a little different from what another kind of person would have offered. So it's just increase the breadth of skills that we have to offer to congregations. So I'm sure you can't read this, but I use this illustration. This is from a presentation I made to the District Presidents Association to show what the old structure was, which kind of begins with President, Vice President, and then myself, and then all of these districts, 19 different districts. And does anybody kind of get blind when they look at that organizational structure? And do you notice how many arrows are poked at my butt in this picture? You know, it just means that there's a direct relationship with all of these, and that's not a sustainable relationship structurally. Does that become apparent through that? So next slide, please. Instead, what we've developed is this kind of structure in which I only have 5 arrows pointed at me, but I do have a structure that's a lot more agile, a lot more coherent, that allows for staff teams to develop in ways that have primary communication lines in which people get their needs met better. There's more accountability. There's more kind of rationality to the system. So this kind of just gives you a figurative sense of what that change might mean. The 5 regions are the Pacific Western region that Nancy Bowen is the regional lead staff person for. That's the Mountain Desert District, the Pacific Southwest District, the Pacific Central District, and the Pacific Northwest District. There is the Northeast region that Sue Phillips is the regional lead for, which is Mass Bay District, Clara Barton District, Blue Channing District, and the Northern New England District. There is Surge. We have a representative from Surge here. Andrea Lerner is great. And Surge is the Ohio Meadville District, St. Lawrence District, Joseph Priestley District, and Metro New York. And we have the Mid-America region, of which Ian Evison is the lead, and that is Central Midwest, Heartland, and Prairie Star districts. So that's kind of what the new structure is. I want to say just a couple of other things, and I'll ask for any questions. First of all, I want to say that because we're changing that staff structure does not mean that we're changing the district structure itself. We are not in the position to tell district boards how they do their work or how they make their decisions. They are going to continue to do that. They're in an evolutionary process in which a lot of districts have made a bunch of different decisions about how they understand their relationship to their staff. But this does not necessitate districts going away. It just means they understand their relationship to the UUA a little bit differently. And so we're in the process of developing what I think is kind of growing religious notion that districts are in covenantal relationship with the UUA, that it's not a contractual relationship so much as it is a covenantal relationship in which we're all trying to serve the same common mission. So it's a very exciting time. It's a very fluid time. These different regions are in various levels of development and coherence. And so, bear with us as we make these changes. But I just wanted you all to know that we now exist in these kind of pods that are able to serve things a little bit more adaptively, a little more effectively. And so the first line of communication for you might want to be the leads as opposed to each individual. It saves you from having to be in relationship with the 36 different field staff people that are out there and allows you to have a primary communication link with the regional leads at this point. And Heather is going to, after this meeting, send you a spreadsheet that gives you all the staff people, all the leads, and which districts are in which region so that you can have that as a reference guide. So you didn't have to memorize that previous picture. So questions? Mark?
If we have, let's see, can you come up to here or? Sure. Why don't you do that if you don't mind? And anyone else who's got questions, you can queue up.
Hi, I'm Mark Steinwater, Director of Information Technology Services. Again, what I'm curious about is with regionalization, does this mean now, Teresa, that if we have information that we want to communicate to the field staff, we can do so through the regions and the regional leads and feel confident that it's going to make it to all the districts?
I think it's still thank you for asking that. I think it's still most effective to copy all field staff, all district staff. But if you want to have a conversation, the easiest person to have the conversation with is a lead. Do you know what I'm trying to say? So if you're shooting out information, please still copy all, and there's the district staff list that anybody has access to. So please send information out to everybody. But if you want to engage in a conversation about issues, it's easiest now to talk to the leads, and then they will figure out how to communicate that within their staff groups.
Great, thanks.
Thank you for that question. Yeah.
I'm Kenneth Sutton. I'm Managing Editor of UU World. And I'm just curious about the relative size of the regions in terms of numbers of congregations and numbers of members.
It's a great question. One of the things that we have found astonishing as we put these regions together kind of haphazardly and organically is that the regions are very similar in size across the board. Mid-America is the smallest because it's only 3 districts. The rest are 4. But even that is still relatively similar in numbers of Unitarian Universalists and numbers of congregations. So it's turned out to be an extraordinarily equitable system in terms of funding levels, numbers of people, places that are congregations that are being served. It's not very equitable in terms of geography. The Western region, the Pacific Western region, is the entire left half of the country, the entire half. So that's obviously a challenging geography for those people to serve, but they already know how to serve big geographies because their districts are already very large. But it's still roughly the same number of congregations. So it's been very interesting to see how that's come about.
Chris Walton from UU World. I'm interested in how we can tap into the deep generalizations of the field staff. I mean, in the past, it's often been, you may find out that some particular field staff person knows a lot about topic A, but I think a lot of us have gotten used to thinking of them as serving districts. How do we know about or identify who's expert in what?
That's a really great question, Chris. And I'm going to ask Heather to take note of that, and I'm going to talk to the leads about how we can communicate that. It might be really helpful to do kind of a skill set matrix that shows what people's areas of deep interest are. A very easy way to do that now is to look at the webinars that people are offering, which are extremely diverse in their content, but that'll give you some idea of that. But in the meantime, I will I will figure out a way that you can get some kind of assessment of what those are. Yes, Susan, I'm sorry.
I'm Joyce Stewart, and I have a really easy question you may already have answered. What does SURGE stand for?
Andrea.
SURGE, or CERG, stands for the Central East Regional Group.
And you are?
Sorry? I'm Andrea Lerner, District Executive, Metro New York. Hi, District staff on the phone. Hi, I'm Susan Leslie, Congregational Advocacy and Witness. And I'm actually excited about going to regions because thinking really big, I just think that's what we need to do in the country. I think that's the kind of government we need. And I'm wondering what kind of work you're doing to build identity for people as being in regions and not, just as a structural thing, but is something going on around that as well?
It's totally fascinating to me to see how those identities have not had to be nurtured. They've been very organic in their development and very clear. So when the Southern region got together as boards, they developed a statement that's called the Orlando Platform, one of the most religious statements I've seen from a governance body in a long time. And their whole mission that they developed during that meeting is to evangelize the South, to bring Unitarian Universalism to the South in a way that's being indigenous to the South, not just an import from New England. And so they have this very clear mission, and they're very clearly Southern. They're dramatic, and they make great statements, and they do all this stuff in a way that they did not do when they were just the Florida district and the Mid-South district. And so they've been able to develop a cultural identity as regions that they were inhibited from when they were smaller districts. So the Mid-America district America region jokes that they are a pretty good district, pretty good region, So they're very understated. They're very highly functional. They're doing all kinds of great organizational things, but they don't want to talk about it like So there are all kinds of really interesting cultural things that have grown up out of that, and I think that's fabulous. And I love that aspect of this whole movement, because the last thing we need is some kind of cookie-cutter Unitarian Universalism. We really need those diverse cultural expressions, and we need to honor that, and we need to find a way to feed that. And interestingly enough, we find a way to feed that in these larger groups than we did in individual bodies. Yeah.
Robin Nelson, Environmental Stewardship. My question is as national staff, when we're going to go out into the field and work with individual congregations, do we contact the regional lead or the district exec first?
The district exec would be still the primary person, and thank you and for that reminder. Field staff really love to hear when you're working with congregations. They can give you background on the congregations, they can give you advice, they can steer you in different directions, and it really helps them know when you're going to be there. So still be in touch with district staff at that stage.
Okay.
Yeah. Anything else? All right. Thank you all very much.